Hello, friends. Welcome to Level Up with Debbie Neal. I am your host. There is nowhere I would rather be than right here, right now with you. This podcast is all about leveling up in all aspects of our lives. Thank you for being here. I am so grateful. I'm excited to be on this journey with you. Together, we are leveling up. You ready? Welcome back, my Level Up family. I hope you're amazing. On today's episode, I want to challenge you a little bit. I mean, I say that, but my goal is to challenge you on every single episode. I want to challenge the story that you've possibly been telling yourself. Because here's the reality. Most people say they want more, okay? They want more income, more impact, more freedom, more confidence, more options. But when you really look at people's actions, they're not pursuing more. Like, if you want more income, the actions aren't bolder. If you want more impact, a lot of times the actions aren't braver. So what's happening in these scenarios, you're protecting what you already have. And these two are very, very different things. So most people, where they think they're stuck. So maybe you think you're stuck and I want to grow to the next level in my business, but I'm stuck. I want to make more money, but I keep staying exactly where I am or less. I'm going to call you out on this, okay? You're not stuck. You're settling. What happens is people simply become comfortable with a life that's beneath their potential. So if you get defensive, don't get defensive, because I have to be honest, I call myself out on this really often. So let me just give you some scenarios. If your bills are paid, like maybe your business is enough to pay your bills, maybe you're making enough money to survive, maybe your life is comfortable enough, like why would you stretch? Why would you set a bigger goal? Why would you set a goal that makes you uncomfortable? Why would you set a goal that makes your heart jump through your chest? Why would you set a goal that makes you feel like you have anxiety? But it's not anxiety. It's that growth period, okay? Why would you become more? And the reality is, the answer is you probably won't. And that's exactly why growth requires goals that force you to change. And that's why I will say this till I am blue in the face. It is important to set a goal every single month. Most people think the goal is the level, the promotion, the weight. But if you don't continue from there, your habits will bounce back. Your belief will bounce back. Okay. So you don't want to have goals that fit your current identity. You want to have goals that demand a new identity. So we talk about identity a lot now in podcasts, because let's just say whatever the top level is in your company, do you identify as that? Or do you identify somebody who's at the first management level or the second management level? Because if you identify as those people, why would you stretch and make a goal to grow you to the top? So the purpose of a goal is to become the person capable of achieving it. You know what I don't understand? This is the thing. People today, I'm seeing a lot of is, I want to chill. I want to relax. I want to remember the days where we just had absolutely no stress. Somebody was funding those days for you. Maybe you were in your teens. Maybe you were in your early 20s. Maybe you were 10 and 12. I remember being 10 and 12 and playing in the neighborhood. And I grew up on this court and we had the best friends, and we all had different school friends, but we were the best neighborhood friends. And we'd go from door to door and can you play? Can you play? And nobody was on PlayStation and nobody was on their phone and nobody was on Instagram and nobody felt excluded. It was just, we were just so present. But I bet there's a lot of 12-year-olds that are working 7 days a week or doing something like that. But I wasn't at the time because my dad was funding my life. My mom was home at the time. My dad was funding my life. Somebody was funding my unpluggedness. So when we really think about this, why are people shying away from goals? And I just want to be zen and I want to feel at peace. Well, are you at peace just getting by? And people say, oh my gosh, I don't want to make money everything. Money's not everything to me. Money's not what brings me happiness. Being able to take my family to dinner makes me happy. being able to do the things in life that cost money makes me happy. Being able to fund my children's weddings makes me happy. So you have to think about the things that make you happy, and you want to set goals for somebody who can do those things. The purpose of a goal is not the destination. The purpose of a goal is the actual transformation that happens inside of you to achieve that goal. And there is a real cost of staying where you are. There is. Like you might be costing, it's amazing how many people don't build the business because somebody's judging you, or you don't build the business because of what somebody else will think. What's it costing you not to build the business? What dreams are you putting on hold? What future are you keeping at bay because you're so consumed with what other people think and that risk of going out on that skinny branch? So let's talk about for a minute the risk of staying the same. And I think one of the greatest lies that we tell ourselves is that, if I don't go after more, like bad things won't happen. I won't set a goal and miss it. I won't feel vulnerable. I won't get rejected. But that's not true. There is always a cost. So every decision you make in life has a price. There's an exchange. There's a price for being successful. There's a price for being where you are. Growth has a price. Staying the same has a price. And most people never calculate the cost of staying where you are. So maybe like when I think about myself, okay, when I started my business, my children were 6. Brooke was 6, Tyler was 4, Bailey and Ryan were 1.5. I actually walked away from a corporate job and I was home with my babies. I was a stay-at-home mom. And I walked away from a 6-figure income, and I knew I had to make up at least $50,000 to bridge that gap. We're going back 25 years, okay? And so I was watching kids to bridge that gap. My bills were paid. We lived in a beautiful house on Long Island. We were getting by. We weren't thriving, but we were getting by. But if I would have worried about the opinions of others and what I was doing wouldn't have been able then 20 years later to fund weddings, to fund college, I have 4 children. They all have significant others. That means I have 8 children. That means when we go out to dinner, we're a party of 10. Nobody orders macaroni and cheese and chicken fingers anymore. And so those things bring me joy. If I would have stayed where I was and not taken that risk of jump into a business I knew nothing about, talk to people regardless of what they thought of me, I would not be able to fund today. So if you don't grow your income, what opportunities will your family miss? I also think of all of the trips that I have earned through my business or been able to afford because of my business. Gosh, those memories. You know what it was like taking my children to a Caribbean trip that I earned every single year and just watch the joy with the pina coladas and the all-you-could-eat nachos and playing with other children and running on the beach and watching them at a young age believe that this is normal, to not have limits, as my children got older, I went to Italy and Australia and Dubai on a 17-day trip with Brooke and Bailey. That would not have been available for me. I took Tyler, just him and I earned this amazing trip, a once-in-a-lifetime trip to Australia. I also took Scott the first time to Australia, but I took my son Tyler the second time. He was 23 years old. We went on a 10-day trip that I will remember and he will remember for the rest of our lives. I took Ryan to Iceland. We went snowmobiling on a glacier. We went four-wheeling and we went whale watching and we saw Iceland in a way that people only dream about. I would have missed that if I would have stayed and not set goals that scare me. So I want you to think about, if you don't grow your business, your income, what opportunities will your family miss? My children would have student loans today. They would have been paying for their own weddings today. And after some people say, that's fine. I paid for mine. All right. That's your choice. But you're made for more. Do you want your life to look different? Do you want to duplicate or do you want to be the difference? So if you don't become healthier, what experience will you not have? Maybe we put off eating better or we put off exercising. What's your life going to look like at 60 or 70? How are you going to travel? When you put on clothes, I know I'm a woman and I don't know if men do the same thing, but my mood is directly connected to the way I feel about myself. If I don't feel good, like knowing I made poor choices with eating or poor choices with exercising, I put that dress on, everybody around me is suffering. I'm not happy. I'm not in the mood. And I'm like annoyed. Like I knew the occasion was coming. Why did I do that? So again, it all comes back to choices. If you don't become more confident, how will doors open for you? If you don't develop leadership skills, how many people will never be impacted by your example? I wasn't a leader when I started my business 20 years ago, but I committed to being a leader. I got on calls whether I felt like it or not. I showed up whether I met my goals or not. I scheduled activity whether people wanted to join me or not. I was becoming a leader. I was committed to being the difference. I was committed to being the lighthouse. Does that mean perfect? No. But it means nobody was ever going to have to wonder, is Debbie Neal present? Is Debbie Neal building? Is Debbie Neal in love with what she's doing? So we don't attract what we want in life. We attract what we're being. So there's always a price. The question is really simply, which price are you willing to pay? And I hear people say all the time, I don't want the stress. Like there's stress to set goals. There's stress for this. Like I'm comfortable where I am. I don't want the responsibility of leadership. I don't want to lead calls. I hear people say like they're a martyr. I like to be in the background. Stop telling yourself that story that's not serving anybody. It's so small. That's your excuse for not showing up and leaning in. People say, I don't want the sacrifice. Look, I get it. I understand that. There was nights I wasn't home to tuck my kids in. There was nights that I missed games. There was nights I missed things, but I made those sacrifices so I could lead a yes life. Because now when things really matter, we have a really important family dinner coming up actually tomorrow night. But by the time you listen to this, because I record in advance, it would have happened weeks ago. And in the family chat with the significant others, like who could make it Friday at 5:30? It's important. My response was like, and anything works for me. Anything works for me because I've made the sacrifices. So I have the freedom, the time, flexibility, and freedom. So when you think about, I don't want the stress, what about the stress of wondering what could have been? What could you have built? How could your life have looked differently? What about the responsibility of knowing you left gifts unused, talents, just that part of you that you're not even tapping into? What about the sacrifice of settling for less than your potential? Because again, every single thing is an exchange, everything. You don't get freedom without discipline. You don't get confidence without courage. You don't get growth without discomfort. You don't get extraordinary results with ordinary effort. Every single thing is an exchange. The people who build extraordinary lives, they understand this and they stop asking, gosh, what will this cost me? And they ask themselves, what will it cost me if I don't? I remember leaving the backyard barbecue when the business was presented to me. And I was like, Deb, you've never sold a thing in your life. You don't know anything about the industry. What if this doesn't work? What if people laugh at you? What if people judge you? What if you lose friends? And then there was that voice that said, what if it works? What if this is what you've been praying for? What if this can change the entire trajectory of your future and your family? What will it cost you, Deb, if you live in your nonsense and your excuses? So that question changes everything. What will it cost you if you don't start the business? What will it cost you if you don't talk to the person, write the book? What will it cost you if you don't lead? What will it cost you if you stay where you are? What will it cost you if you don't raise your standards? What will it cost you if you spend the next 5 years exactly where you are today? That's a really sobering question because most people think they're standing still. You're not standing still. No, you're not. You're either moving forward or you're moving backwards. We're human beings and we're always in motion. Life is moving. The market is moving. Your business is moving. Your industry is moving. Your children are growing. Technology is moving. The world is moving. Okay. And if you're not growing, you're actually falling behind. There is absolutely no neutral. You're either expanding or you're contracting. You're either growing or you're shrinking. You're either building or you're drifting. And leaders understand this. And that's why leaders don't wait until they're forced to change. They choose change before it chooses it for them. They don't wait for the pain. They create the vision. They don't wait for crisis. They create urgency. They don't wait for circumstances. They create standards. And that's why they continue growing while other people remain stuck. They're not stuck. They're just not setting goals big enough that challenge them. They're setting goals to meet the life that they have today. And this is not because they're more talented, right? The ones that are growing, not because they're luckier, not because they're smarter, because they refuse to settle, because they always want to expand. One day, you'll either experience the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. One produces growth, the other produces excuses. So what we want to make sure we do is that we choose really wisely, because the future version of you is depending on the decisions you're making today. Most people set goals based on what feels realistic. Yeah. And leaders set goals based on what would require growth. And there's a really big difference. A goal that you can accomplish with your current habits will not change your life. A goal that requires a new version of you, that changes everything. So I want you to think about this. If you are currently making $70,000 a year and your goal is $75,000 a year, you may get there by working a little bit harder. But if you're making $75,000 a year and your goal is $500,000 a year, you're not going to get there from just working harder. You need to think differently. You need to lead differently. You need to show up differently. Your habits need to be different. You need to learn differently, speak differently, become differently. The goal itself is not the point. The person you become on the journey is. And I think one of the biggest traps in life is learning how to justify where you are. We become experts at explaining our limitations. I'm doing okay. I'm making enough. Things aren't bad. I have enough. Maybe next year. This season is really busy. So what happens is we justify average. We normalize mediocrity. And eventually we build a life around excuses that sound responsible. But here's the problem. You don't become extraordinary accidentally. You become extraordinary intentionally. No one drifts to greatness. People drift to average. Greatness requires deliberate action. Greatness requires courage. Greatness requires deciding that your current level is not your final level. So I want you to ask yourself a question. What goal have you been afraid to set because it would require too much of you? Not because it's impossible, because it would force you to change. That's usually the goal you need, because most people don't feel failure. They feel transformation. Transformation is uncomfortable. Growth is uncomfortable. Expansion is uncomfortable. Leadership is uncomfortable. You know what's also uncomfortable? Regret, settling, wishing. Looking back 5 years from now, knowing you had more inside of you, knowing you could have done more, knowing you could have become more, knowing you played small because it felt safe. I've been building my business for over 2 decades. And one thing I've learned is that comfort is one of the most dangerous places a person can live. Comfort convinces you that you're okay right where you are. Comfort wishes, take it easy. You've done enough. Slow down. Stay where it's safe. Meanwhile, your potential is begging for more. Potential doesn't care about comfort. Potential demands growth. Potential demands expansion. Potential demands courage. And leaders understand something that most people don't. Comfort is expensive. It costs you your future. It costs you your dreams. It costs you your impact. It costs you the life you could have had. And the greatest leaders I've ever met aren't necessarily the most talented. They aren't necessarily the smartest. They're simply willing to stretch. They're willing to get uncomfortable. They're willing to ask more of themselves. They're willing to raise the bar. And because they raise the bar for themselves, they naturally raise the bar for others. So that part right before this too would be a good one. You cannot call others to greatness if you're unwilling to pursue your own. Leadership starts with self-leadership. You cannot expect your team to stretch if you're okay where you are. If you're okay where you are, how will your team be more? How will they grow? How will they promote? How will they earn more? If you stay where you are because you're making enough, hear me when I say this, it's selfish and it's small. And if you want to punch me in the face, take a number like at the deli counter and get in line. Because I'm not going to say it's okay, it's not. You cannot expect your family to dream bigger if you've stopped dreaming. You cannot expect your organization to grow if you've stopped growing. People don't follow words, they follow examples. Your life gives people permission. What are you giving people permission to do? To settle, to pull back, or to rise? I believe one of the greatest responsibilities we have as leaders is to model what's possible, not perfection, possibility. To show people what's available when they commit, to show people what's available when they stop making excuses, to show people what's available when they decide they're capable of more. Because the truth is, most people underestimate themselves. They've been living with the same standards for so long that they think those standards are their reality. But standards create reality. Raise your standard, change your result. Raise the standard, change your future. Raise the standard, change your identity. Everything changes when the standard changes. You don't get what you want. You get what you tolerate. You get what you expect. You get what you demand. If you've been tolerating average effort, you will get average results. If you've been demanding excellence, you will get excellence. The results are always revealing your standard. So I'm going to ask you, where have you lowered your standards? Where have you accepted less than you're capable of? Why are you sitting at the same management level for so long? Where have you settled? Because once you identify it, you can change it. And here's the beautiful thing. Your life can change incredibly fast once you decide to raise your expectations. Not expectations of others, expectations of yourself. The moment you decide, I expect more from me, everything shifts. Your decisions shift, your habits shift, your conversation shifts, your confidence shifts, your results shifts. Because identity drives behavior and behavior drives outcomes. The reason many people don't achieve more isn't because they lack ability. It's because they're unwilling to become someone different. They're waiting for results before they change. They're waiting for approval before they build something big. Leaders change first. Results follow. Leaders become first. Results follow. Leaders stretch first. Results follow. So our goal is to become the person your goals require. Okay? So I want you to stop asking, how do I achieve this goal? And start asking, who do I need to become? Because every result you're seeking is attached to an identity. $1 million earners think differently. World-class leaders think differently. Extraordinary parents think differently. Elite performers think differently. The gap isn't usually information, it's identity. The person you are today has produced the results you currently have right now. If you want different results, you must become a different person. Not a different person at your core, a different version of yourself, a stronger version, a more disciplined version, a more courageous version, a more committed version, a version that keeps promises to themselves, a version that follows through, a version that acts despite fear. When your identity changes, your behavior changes. When your behavior changes, your results change. When your results change, your life changes. So the goal isn't really the goal. The goal is who you become while pursuing the goal. And that person is waiting for you on the other side of a decision. Friends, how often do we use that word? A decision to stop settling, a decision to raise your standard, a decision to stretch, and a decision to become the leader you were created to be. So I want to leave you with this. I want you to imagine your life 5 years from now if nothing changes. You have the same habits, same standards, same conversations, same friends, same excuses, same income, same fears, same comfort zone. Would you be excited? Would you be fulfilled? Would you be proud? And so now I want you to imagine the opposite. Imagine deciding today that you're done settling for where you are. You're done playing small. You're done making excuses. You're done living beneath your potential. Imagine setting a goal so big that it demands growth. Imagine becoming the version of yourself capable of achieving it. Imagine the confidence you now have, the impact, the opportunities, the freedom, the legacy. That's available when you stop settling. You are not stuck at your level, at your income, at your health. You are one bold decision away from a different future, one new standard away from a different life, one courageous goal away from becoming someone you've never been before. So raise the bar, stretch yourself, call yourself to greatness, then call others to greatness too. Because the life you want isn't found inside of your comfort zone. It's waiting for you on the other side of growth. And growth begins the minute you decide that good enough is no longer good enough. So, friends, remember, your potential is not your problem. You were beautifully and uniquely made. You have everything you need inside of you. The problem is the willingness to stretch into who it is we're meant to be. So, friends, go out there and level up and make this week absolutely amazing. Before we go, if today's episode spoke to you, I would love to invite you to pick up my book, Level Up Your Leadership. It's for sale on Amazon or through the link in my show notes. There are 11 chapters. I'm sharing the mindset shifts, leadership lessons, and success strategies that have helped so many people level up their life and business. And if you order it, would you do me two huge favors? First, share it with your network, your team, or someone you love. And second, if you love it, please leave a written review and 5 stars on Amazon. These reviews make the book more visible, and together we can bless even more people. And I would truly love to hear your biggest aha moments, your favorite parts, and what impacted you the most. Come connect with me on Instagram at Debbie_Neal. Love you, friends.